And again, a question to ask your factory. Hey, what holidays are we up against? Or if they come back with what seems like a slightly longer lead time than what you are expecting, dig in. Ask why. Is it because the fabric you're asking for is taking an extra 15, 30 days to knit? Maybe there's an alternative.
Do you have a brilliant product idea but don't know where to start to get it made? Or are you looking to level up your product but afraid to take it overseas?
If so, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Erin, and we are
The Sourcing Gals,
your trusted guides to everything you need to know about sourcing, manufacturing, and scaling your product overseas. Whether you are just starting out or you've been making your own product for a while, we are here to help women source products overseas without the overwhelm.
In each episode, we'll share insider tips, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories to help you source more effectively, save time, and boost your profits. Duh! We know how hard it can be to juggle the ins and outs of product development, but don't worry, we've got your back.
So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into how you can grow your business,
make more money,
and turn your products into profit. Welcome to
The Sourcing Gals. Now let's get started. High five.
Hi.
Welcome back to another episode of
The Sourcing Gals.
Okay, this is going to be a fun one. Summertime, car trips with kids.
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet?
How many more minutes, Mom?
But really, are we there yet?
I always say, is the car still moving? Do you see a parking lot? We are not there yet.
I love that. Well, that can kind of feel like when you're in the product development journey, when you're on your journey and you're just thinking like, damn, are we there yet?
And I know from my corporate background, that is a question I used to get a lot from like the buyers and the executives who'd be looking at me for product. They'd be like, are we there yet?
Yeah. And you're like, actually, no, we still have a long way to go.
Like my calculations say.
So we thought today would be fun to dive in a little bit more for those that may not be as familiar with it about production lead times.
Yep.
The process of bringing a product to life, like literally how long it takes and how many nuances there are. Like, spoiler alert, there is no one size fits all product development timeline. I'm kind of excited to actually learn a little bit more because it's been a minute since I've been in the jewelry world. And also, if you think about hair accessories and acetates and plastics, right? I know that's super your world, where I've really been more on the apparel side as of late. So it'll be interesting to see within, one might think apparel and accessories would be on similar lead times, and some things are, but then there's also quite nuances even within that, and even within apparel itself when you're talking about fabrications and whatnot. So,
of course.
So let's get into it. So first things first, when bringing a product to life, you have to have an idea, right? Yes. Have an original, have an idea, have a concept, have a design. Some things come real quick. You might think of an idea within a week and you can put pen to paper and sketch it and throw it in ChatGPT, have them bring a prototype to life probably pretty fast. And some things might take you a while.
Some things take a lot of back and forth, even when it comes to what materials am I making this out of? Okay, well, now I have to go do some research, and now I have to see what I like. And maybe you have a shape in your mind or an idea, but when it really comes pen to paper, what are you looking for? That process can take a few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. So once you eventually land on what the idea is, then to your point, finding your materials, what you want to use, and then also you got to start dating those factories again, right? Get into a courtship trying to find the right factory for that item.
And I think that's important too, because your materials, we've talked about this in past episodes, your materials will adjust based on who you land on for a factory. You'll go to factory A and they'll say, oh, okay, my canvas supplier offers canvas in these colors, or my minimums for dye new canvas are blank. And factory B will say, oh, this is my color card from my preferred canvas supplier. So they'll have different opportunities and options when it comes to those materials. And those are things that all happen kind of in conjunction with building that tech.
Yeah, and I also want to say if you are already working with an existing factory for a different product, let's say, and you're launching a new category, you're launching a new type of product, but you love your factory. I want to stay with my same factory. It just might not make sense.
Yeah.
You might end up paying way higher sample charges and mold fees because you're not going to the place that actually is the expert. So,
I actually have a great example of that that happened last week. Um, a client was doing jewelry and they thought, okay, well, I bet this jewelry supplier can just make us a cute little uh, leather zipper pouch, travel pouch for this jewelry. Well, they could make it, but was it good? It wasn't. So we ended up just moving to a different supplier who specialized in that product. Not only did it come faster, the quality was better, everything. So even though it seemed simpler at the moment to stay with one factory, it actually ended up taking more time because we had more revisions of samples, which is what we'll talk about next.
awesome. Yes, that's a great segue. So, once you actually have the design, it's time to go into sampling. So, truly bringing that 2D idea that's in your brain to real life through your factory, right? Now, that sampling process, again, there's a pretty wide range
There
of
is a pretty
how long it takes. So let's just talk about, for example, jewelry.
Mhm.
I have a jewelry design. I'm pulling it together. I have my sketch. I've pulled my technical packet of information. Maybe I've sent the factory some quality examples, some shapes. So they kind of know what I'm going for, right? So now they're going to actually bring it to life. How long would it take? Let's go back to my favorite charm necklace. Like, how long might it take for a single? Let's do one charm, like kind of like the necklace you're wearing. You have a single pendant
Yes.
on a chain
Yes.
to bring to life, to see it in sample form. And what might that look like?
Okay. We've talked about this in a past episode as well, but when it comes to jewelry, you have a lot of different components. Same as anything, even a t-shirt, you're going to have the tags and the thread and the fabric and the artwork. For jewelry, everything is a mold. So everything is being made in a steel mold first, and then it moves to like a zinc or brass or a silver mold. And before those molds are made, you have 3D CADs. Um, now it's quicker if you can do the 3D CAD yourself and pass it on to the vendor, but so few people actually have that capability. At all of the jewelry companies I've worked for, I've never worked for one where we made our own 3D CADs.
Interesting.
So we send that 2D paperwork in, and it takes I'd say 3 to 4 days to get the CAD, another week maybe to get the mold made. And then after the mold's made and all the pieces and components can be casted, maybe another week to assemble. So all in all, about a month
Wow, okay,
to get a sample made.
that's longer than I thought actually. So okay, that's interesting. So if we think about, again, go to a t-shirt example and say you have a new graphic design on a t-shirt. If there's an existing fabric that my factory has lying around, 7 days, 10 days,
Wow.
cut, sewn, screen printed, put in FedEx. So within maybe 2 weeks, I could have a sample with a factory that actually has a well-functioning sample room
Mhm.
and available sample screen machines. Like, if they're really in the business, I'm getting samples pretty fast. Within 2 to 3 weeks is fair.
And this is something that's so interesting about some accessories, but most jewelry factories, most fashion jewelry factories, they do not make everything under one roof. The factory is more of like a contractor, a general contractor, and the castings are done over here, the stonework's done over here, the enamel work's done over here, the plating is done over here. So that's kind of what takes all the time is they send it out, they get it back. They send it out, they get it back. They send it out, and they're doing QA QC between all of those steps.
Wow.
So that happens at the sample phase, and then again in the production phase. And we'll get to this in a moment, but it's long in the sampling side, but it's much shorter in the production side.
Got it. So, and that's interesting. So if I had a customer who wanted a very heavyweight t-shirt, like very, very street, cool, hip tee that was going to be like 400 grams plus, like super heavy in regards to like a cotton tee. And my factory's like, we don't have this on hand. Like, we have to knit this from scratch. So then all of a sudden my 2 to 3 week t-shirt lead time turned into a month and a half because it takes about 30 days, even in sample form,
To
knit, because they're going to knit it in a small batch and they're going to dye it in a small batch. They have to test it, make sure it actually executed right, that it weighs right. And sometimes they'll have to rerun it, re-dye it if there's major quality issues, because running a small batch is challenging in and of itself. So, that's where you might get into a month and a half. So if you think about your product category, what you're trying to do, are you having to cut screens to print, or can you just digitally print your first sample round, right? There's
Right.
lots of hacks you can do to cut down pricing and lead time when it comes to that first sample back.
Sure. And then I think what you add on to that is that's one sample round.
One.
I've worked at companies where we've hit 4, 5 sample rounds before we'll get an approval. Whereas I've also worked at companies that would not order anything, would not go past one sample round. If it's not viable after one sample round, it goes in the cutting room floor.
Hmm.
We're not doing it because our timelines we built as a company did not account for it.
Interesting. Very smart. So
Fast
yeah,
fashion.
you have to think about that though as you're sampling, how important is that next revision?
Mhm.
And what does it do to your timeline? Is it worth seeing it one more time because it's a non-negotiable? There's also something in the world called in the market called correct and proceed, CNP to be exact, another one of our fun retail acronyms, where you actually will tell the factory, hey, this color was maybe slightly off. I want you to get back to standard. Please CNP, please correct and proceed, which basically you're giving the factory authority to try one more time, but on their own to save the back and forth timeline, right? So when timelines are tight, sometimes you have to make those concessions. What are you okay to live with? What are you okay to live without? And where do you have enough trust, hopefully built in with the factory, that you actually let them to do a correct and
And
proceed?
typically that's low hanging fruit. Like if something was a little messy on a sample, I would always correct and proceed. I'm like, fix that. There's glue everywhere. Send me a picture of it revised. Um, or like if it's an enamel bracelet, like this enamel's coming out over the borders, like don't fill it so high. Send me a picture that you understand. Like I don't necessarily have to like see another sample in my office.
Plus, when you think about a sample, that was, as we've talked about, also hand sewn by one person.
Yes.
That's not actually from the factory line. So for me on the apparel side, we'd have loose threads, we'd have a crooked label, like, hey, this can't be the standard, but I also know that, like, Samantha sewed this in your room, right? And so
Yeah.
she's not necessarily indicative of what the factory line is going to look like. However, I need to make sure if this is the perfect sample, that the factory line isn't seeing a crooked label as the standard, right?
Right.
So resew the sample, to your point, take a picture. Let me see it. We've even done where we are running really tight in timelines for graphics on t-shirts. We've actually had them put the color chips, the color standards, it's called a Pantone book. We'd actually had them re-screen print and put the Pantone book next to the t-shirt and like show us with really good photos, with really good lighting, how much closer are we if the first strike off or the first sample round was like really far off. But again, there just isn't time to wait. I mean, even 5 days,
Yeah.
via FedEx to air it back to us. So that's sometimes how, when you're talking about major big box retail production runs, when the deadline of something is the deadline and you have to meet it, that there sometimes are concessions that have to be made.
And I feel like we harp on this quite a lot. I'm going to go back to it. This is why that pre work leading up to sending out your tech pack and finding the right factory is so imperative because the more detailed you are, the more you know what you want, the more you give the exact zipper you want or the exact snap that you want. Um, the more that you outline your expectations before going into sampling, the more accurate it will usually be.
Correct.
If you're going in willy nilly, which believe me, sometimes I go in willy nilly, but I know that what I get back is going to be a toss up of good or bad. Like, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, even down to elastic. I remember when I was working on my own pajamas, I had a very specific elastic quality I wanted in my waistband. I was like, it cannot cut you off. It has to be super forgiving. I want it to feel soft, even though it's going to be encased in fabric and you will never see it, like in my head. So I went and scoped the market because I did first say, send me some elastics that fit XYZ requirement. My first submit back, nothing was even close. So, okay, forget that. I tried. I'm going to now go shop the market, find the perfect elastic, send it to my factory. Guess what? The next sample round, perfect. So again,
It's interesting you say that because I didn't know that about your pajamas, but they are quite lovely around the waist.
It was purposeful. There was purpose to the elastic, even down to that trim. So okay, so let's say you've sampled, you've got that first round. Now going back and forth with revisions. Sometimes those revisions will speed up depending on if you have leftover fabric. If you're apparel, maybe you're not changing mold shapes, you're just changing certain nuances or the lengths, right? Different things. So those samples and the amount of back and forth is really dependent on how quickly your factory can get to that perfect place that you need to be.
That's a great thing to bring up because even if you do, like you said, even if you do multiple rounds of sampling, if you are building a mold, if you are getting a new fabric in, that'll usually cut way down on secondary rounds. And I wanted to give another example of something that, the cheap and cheerful, the acetate acrylic hair clips and a lot of accessories that are made of plastics. The mold timings on those are very, very high. They can be from 45 to 60 days to get the mold, and the molds cost thousands of dollars. So you would, before you even got to that point, you would likely request like a 3D print of something so that you can confirm that they're on the right track before you pay $5,000 for a mold. But the good news is, once that mold's done, production's like 15 days.
Got it. So you're really saving it on the back
You're
end.
really saving it on the back end. And from my experience, maybe save leather handbags. Those are a lot on the front and on the back. They're just long all the way forward to backward. But if something's really long on the front, usually that cuts down the back and vice versa.
Got it. And actually, you brought up another point, just cost in general for samples. And again, I know we've spoken about this as well, but you have to imagine that every time you are requesting a sample, that is taking someone's time and effort and raw materials, and they're literally sewing it together. The more detailed you can be with every revision, like the amount of times you can save one more sample, it's not only time, it's money as well. Your money usually, because factories will sometimes charge for that. Most likely they will. Sometimes they'll kick it back to you. If you go to bulk production, sometimes they won't. It's just part of the R&D process. So making sure you are giving really good feedback on each one of those samples will hopefully cut down on all of those things.
A good example of this that happened to me last year, I launched my jewelry brand right before Christmas. I wanted it for Christmas. I wanted it live for Christmas. And that was very important to me. So I paid out the wazoo for almost overnight shipping back and forth of my samples because I was cutting it very close. Really excited, gone to one supplier. They weren't a great match. After wear testing, the wear test didn't hold up like I wanted. I completely moved suppliers. So I was like in a chase mode. And I was like, I understand this is going to be $250, $300 for each FedEx
Yikes.
package. Yeah. But it was also like a premium product. Like there's no way I was going to go to market without seeing that the sample was right. And so, if it were a $15 fashion product, I might have been like, it's good enough.
Yep.
But that's not the way I was looking at this particular product. So I upped my budget when it came to shipping those samples back and forth to cut down on time. I mean, it probably saved me 25 days.
Yeah. That's meaningful, especially when you're talking holiday selling. So that's great. Okay. So let's say you've got your approved sample, you've gone back and forth, you're finally ready to approve a sample. Now the clock basically starts back over again when you talk about bulk production lead times.
Yeah, I think what we talked about when samples, like you're getting the molds ready, you're getting the fabric ready, you're doing all this stuff. Production's the same, it's just on a bigger scale.
Correct. It's moving from the sample room and to mass, whatever that means, 100, 500, 5,000, right? And so there's a lot of nuances that go into bulk production timelines. Let's just break this down because it's, again, not a one size fits all. So the first trigger might be your raw materials, which we've talked a little bit about. Apparel raw material lead time, I would say on average 30 to 45 days is kind of your standard fabric lead time. So that is just to knit and dye the fabric itself. I will tell you for my pajamas, it's even longer than that because it is a specialty fabric that takes extra sourcing and procuring of the yarns. They're mint infused yarns, which is a whole nother additional lead time process. It's not something that they just sit on, that available type of yarn quality. So there's even extra lead time. So you can ask those questions. How much does my fabric play into this? And whether you're creating your own, whether you're leveraging an existing, that's where you can sometimes in the apparel world knock that down a bit, is if a factory already has a running fabric that they use day in, day out, you might be able to get that lead time down.
They might have stock.
They might have stock. But I would say typically you're in a 30 to 45 day on the apparel fabric side, and I'm talking cut sew knits. But then you move to the jewelry side, raw materials. What does that look like?
2 weeks.
Okay, so there you go.
1 to 2 weeks, really. If it's a metal, if it's like a metal hoop like what you're wearing, it's almost nothing. Everyone has just full stock of brass and zinc at any given point in time. But if it's got stones in it or an acetate or like an acrylic component, then 2 weeks, I would say.
Okay. So that's for the raw
The
materials.
raw materials.
Then you actually move into the production piece. Again, I'm going to flip over to apparel. You have a lead time for them to actually cut the fabric into the pattern that you need and then sew. And again, on the apparel side, you're typically looking at another 30 to 60 days for the actual bulk manufacturing of it. Now, I know people say, but I'm only sewing 100 units. Why does it take 30 days? And I hear you. It sounds crazy and you can try to push back, but you are not the only person on that production line. People are planning production months, some even like a year. And I know that sounds crazy, but some people are literally passing projections to their factory when you're really in business a year in advance, blocking time to say, no, this is when I need to run my production. So they're going to slot your 100 units in between someone else's orders. And so that is why, even at a small quantity, you might still be looking at a 30 to 45-day lead time. Doesn't mean they're actually going to take 30 days to sew your garments.
Well, think of it like if you go to the hair salon and you're getting your hair done, like I get cut, color, and highlight. If they're working me in, I'm gonna get highlights over here, then I might have to go into the dryer and wait. Then I'm gonna go get washed. Then they're gonna cut me, and they're like doing men's haircuts and kids' haircuts, like in between all the gaps and stuff.
It's a
You know what
great
I mean?
analogy. Yes.
Whereas if I got booked just like front to back, if they just did my hair only, it would take an hour and a half. But instead, it's taking me 3.5 hours. Like that's a good analogy. Like
Yeah.
they're filling in those gaps with other clients and customers who they already had commitments or appointments with. They're not just focusing front to end on your own thing solely.
So we've talked about raw material, we've talked about the actual time to produce, and now we're kind of segueing into the factory side of it, right? Like factory capacities, it's called. How busy and booked is that factory, and how far in advance do they book? I can tell you that there is a range on the apparel side. I have certain factories where I know they will always fit me in. They will squeeze somebody else out because I have an existing relationship, or they're just a faster factory. They have more sewing lines. Their goal is to churn and burn, get in and out. Where I have some factories who that's not their model. They take longer to do it, but the quality level's higher.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
so there's pros and cons to all of it. So again, as you're thinking about your product, these are important filters to ask yourself. Is it more about speed? Is it more about quality? Can you afford to have your production lead time be 45 days fabric plus 60 days production? And hey, we haven't even talked about the transportation side to get to, which is a whole nother can of worms, right? So understanding where you're at when you're trying to launch in the market, all these are important conversations as you navigate conversations with your factory.
And there's one important step in between those two things. So you're getting your bulk materials, which Jackie said for apparel can be around 45 days. For jewelry and accessories, like 2 weeks ish. But after you get bulk materials in, you get a sample called a PP sample. The PP sample is a pre production sample. It is your perfect sample, I'm using air quotes, your perfect sample utilizing those bulk materials. Correct. So that gives you an opportunity to see, okay, this huge order of fabric that we ordered for our t shirts, it is correct to color, it is correct for weight, the graphic is correct. So once everything amps up to utilizing bulk materials, is it still correct? And it's kind of like I'm just full of analogies today. It's kind of like, if you were gonna make one little like microwave cake in a mug. Have you ever made those?
Yes, I have.
If you were gonna make that versus a whole cake, it's the difference between taking something on a small scale and making it on a big scale. It does change slightly. So once it goes onto that big scale, you get a PP sample, which is a confirmation that everything's good to go. So you'll get all of your bulk materials in, they'll stop, they'll make your PP sample, you'll approve it, and then they'll proceed into production.
Correct. It's really your gold standard. It's the target at which all of your bulk manufacturing will be paired up against. So it's a very important, it's the most important sample you're going to have,
the
to be
most
honest.
important. And this is where, when we talked about nuances and timing earlier, this is where things can sometimes really go awry. Because if you get that PP sample and you're like, wait, that is not the color that we approved. We approved this ice blue. This is leaning more robin's egg. This isn't right. You have to redye all this fabric. And if you have a good understanding of the industry and your vendor, they need to do that for you on your behalf. It's on their dime because they did not match the approval. But time is still time.
Yep.
So even if they're redoing it, even if they're doing, saying, you're right, we're going to pay for this to be redone, you're still out that 45 days to redo it.
Yeah, and I did that happened to me. We had a client who had a very specific color standard. Bulk PP came in and that green was not the right green and it was not their brand green. And my factory, because again, we had a great existing relationship, they shaved time on the production side. So obviously they still had to reknit and dye, but they were able to push us ahead and get our goods cut and sewn much quicker to hold
They kicked some
our
other people
timing.
out of line.
For sure. I'm sorry, other people, but this was a very big order and they had to get it done and they knew that, right?
Yeah.
So that's again importance of having those factory relationships too. Because they're gonna do favors like that for you.
Yeah.
Even when it's their own fault, to be honest. But still, they
Yeah, but it's the time space continuum. I always
Yes.
say, like, we can't go back in time.
Yes. So okay, so you've approved your PP, your pre-production sample. Now you're in bulk production. Like I said, so we've talked about the bulk fabric lead time, the production lead time, the factory capacity lead time. Oh, wait. Guess what, Erin? It's a holiday now.
No. Which one?
Name it.
Mid-Autumn Festival.
Tomb sweeping.
Lunar New Year.
Dragon Festival.
Oh, Dragon Festival.
And then if you're also in Bangladesh or other parts of the world too, there's Eid holiday, which is a long,
Yeah.
long. You're talking weeks. Oh, and then the biggest one of all, Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
Hello. Bye-bye factories for
A month.
a month. And then when they come back, it's kind of like you're rolling after Thanksgiving meal. Like it's slow going.
Slow return.
People literally leave the factories and migrate back to their home, like hometowns for a week. And so the process of it's probably like college, like students returning from spring break. Like it's a slow trickle and like, oh shit, we're back at school now. We got to get going. I have a job. I got homework to do. Right. So it truly is. It takes time for factories to get back up and running. And it's interesting. They space out the shutdown of the factories, especially on the apparel side.
Yes.
Raw material factories, meaning your knitting mills, shut down earlier than your cut sew factories. If you think about the way that happens, right? You knit fabric first, then cut and sew. So it's kind of staggered that way to not totally impede everything, but it is a full month lost.
Yes, that's like for jewelry, plating closes first. And so, and material suppliers, but sometimes we'll even be trying to get samples in a month before Lunar New Year, and they'll be like, platers are closed. And I was like, oh geez, already? Really?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about them coming back, like college students trickling in after spring break, when I plan my timing and action, when I plan how my product is going to be made and it spans over Lunar New Year, I make sure that my production doesn't stop start, because you can just get into so many issues with that. So I like to make sure that either my production is totally done before they leave, or they're not actually starting production until they return.
Yeah, we usually on the apparel side, they will have my fabric sitting and ready.
Yes.
But it's not cut yet. Or they will never, from what I know, now again, this is just what they tell me, that they're usually not mid sewing lines when they would shut down.
No.
They plan it so that they're at least prepped and ready. So the minute the factory lights turn back on, like I'm back in the book production.
But it's such an important thing to consider when we do timing for any of our projects. It, especially because, you're going to hear this for the Are You There Yet part. This can take 6, 9, 12, up to 18 months for complex leather handbags. It's been my experience. So you are going to hit that holiday. Chances are very high, 75% you're going to hit the holiday. So you are going to have to plan for it.
Yeah. So I think it's just a very important piece. And again, a question to ask your factory. Hey, what holidays are we up against? Or if they come back with what seems like a slightly longer lead time than what you are expecting, dig in. Ask why. Is it because the fabric you're asking for is taking an extra 15, 30 days to knit? Maybe there's an alternative. Or is it because your production has, even your order of operations, the way in which you're sewing or finishing something that you might not even think of as a specialty? The factory might say, well, yeah, that actually has to move to a different sewing machine, a different this, different that. And it might not even be that important to you. And you might be like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, I don't actually care about that. That was just the retail sample I bought happened to do it. So sometimes asking those questions and digging in when we talk about your TNA, your timing and action, which is literally this entire production timeline that we're talking about, there's a lot. There might be time saves that you can find just by asking questions.
And we talk about that a lot in cost when we say what's driving cost. You can say what's driving this timeline. And they could say, oh, it's this over here and this over here and this over here. And you can say, all right, well, I'll make a different choice then.
Correct.
Or you can, like I've done in the past, if I am up against a deadline and I cannot deal with Lunar New Year, I will just do it in another country, which is hard sometimes. But in jewelry, it's like you have options. I'll just be like, fine, I'm going to do this one in India, which wouldn't be my first choice, but like I'll do it.
It's funny. We could look at that in apparel, but the problem is India has an extra 30-day lead time. So even with Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, sometimes it's still it's basically about it kind of becomes a wash sometimes for
it
us.
does.
So it just depends. Okay, so let's say you've gone through the steps, you've figured out, you've sorted out the holidays, and your product is like getting ready to be shipped. And you're thinking, are we there yet?
No, you're not. You have another round of samples.
Let's talk about it.
TOP, top of production samples. They are literally top of production. The first couple samples to have come off the line, you are looking at them in person for the labels, the tags, the packaging, the everything. If it's a t-shirt, how it's folded.
Correct.
Every single thing. It should look exactly like it's going to look when it comes to your warehouse. And those are we said the PP is the most important, and I do believe that because I've worked with companies where we skip the TOP, which is risky.
Yep.
But we've done it.
Yep.
If you really trust your factory, it could be an option, but I don't recommend it. But top of production, you get one in the mail, you review it with your team, you say, yeah, go. Usually the production line's still going the whole time.
Yeah.
So if you catch something that's wrong, you have to get on there and be like, stop the presses.
Yep. Literally, which I've done.
You've done.
Oh, yeah.
The sparkly mousse. We talked about that was episode 1.
That was one. And then there's been other times where, yep, that TOP has arrived and it's like, oh, shit. Like, this is not totally right. Now, sometimes we've been able to segment and say, okay, again, correct and proceed if it's not totally brand destroying, right? Like if it's a detail that we'd ideally wanted changed, goes on the correct and proceed. If they're all sitting in a store back to back to back, will you notice it? And some of my customers, a lot of them are actually online. So they're not going to be actually sitting on the same rack. So consumer A versus consumer B buying these, and from the photographs that they're taking online, like you won't tell. Okay, fine, let's correct and proceed. And we've had some TOPs where they were really wrong and we lost half the production run because we could not take in half of the goods, and we were able to call the oh shit moment about 50% through the production.
Now, how many times in your entire career, how many times do you think that's happened?
Oh, count on one hand.
Yeah.
If even that. Like it really is where it's traumatic when it happens. So I definitely remember a few of them, but usually this is where I say to take off your designer hat, put on your merchandise hat, where you really have to think about, okay, I get it's not to the standard, but will the customer even know the difference? Usually when a top of production sample comes in that's incorrect, to be honest, if we think, again, it is not going to ruin the sale, we will just continue the rest of production the same way. So at least they're all consistently incorrect.
Then you're weighing the money I lose by not launching this. Is that worth it? Is it going to ruin my brand? Is it going to hurt someone, for goodness sakes? Like we've gotten things at the last minute that have had let in them.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a hard no.
Yeah.
Stop.
Correct.
We're not shipping that.
Yep.
But I think the majority for me at the TOP stage, things that have been wrong have been like a ticketing error. Something has the wrong, like the blue has the yellow ticket and the yellow has the blue ticket.
Yes.
Something like that, which you can fix in your warehouse.
100%.
It's an easier fix than, something containing lead.
Yeah. No, very true. So, okay, let's say you get your top of production sample. Hopefully they look great.
They look awesome.
We probably scared you guys a lot, but it's okay. Majority of the time, everything's great. We're just, preparing you for the times where maybe you got to be a little flexible or make some hard calls. But it looks great. Now production's being packed up.
Mhm.
And then how are you getting it here? Another way that just keeps adding to the timeline.
Adding to the timeline, you can ship it via air on an airplane, or you can ship it on a boat. There are also different boat options. We don't need to get into that. It's a lot.
Although
We joke a lot about the fast boat.
we would joke every day about the fast boat, because you ask my CEO at the time about the fast boat, like, this doesn't exist. But then it does exist. It does. You pay a little more. There is literally a fast boat from China compared to a slow boat. But I will tell you what also really affects timing when it comes to boating your product is how much you're buying. So I know a lot of us that are just starting off, we're never going to fill a full container. And if you think about a container, it's literally the back end of a semi. It's like when you see all those semis on the road, and someone might say a full container load, that literally means the back end of that semi bag.
Yeah.
Like you have one item or one customer's product that fills the whole thing. Right. And that it's a dream to have that much product to fill it.
Even when I worked at billion-dollar companies, I don't know that I've ever filled a container.
Oh, that's funny. That's because jewelry, because they're small. But for me, I worked quite a lot in container loads,
and accessories.
Yeah. Which was fun. It turns out about 70,000 t-shirts fills a container, if you're ever curious. But when you think about lead time, for me, when you're talking about, again, about scale, when freight comes off the boat, that whole container is going to literally be packed, picked up, put on a boat, like Captain Phillips style. Right? Is that Captain Phillips?
Who's Captain Phillips?
What's the movie where they come in, they like attack the boat that he's his ship vessel? Oh, you got to go see that one.
I thought you were going to be talking about Captain and Tennille.
No, Captain Phillips. I think that's okay. We're gonna go back and fact check that, but it's an amazing movie. But anyways, there's like a container being put on a huge ass vessel, right? Mm-hmm. And then when it gets to port, it is taken off. And then the question is what happens next? If that container is filled with one person's product, it immediately gets put on a truck bed and starts the road trip to wherever the distribution center is. But if your container is one piece of many, meaning you take up maybe a couple pallets worth on that truck bed, but there's other companies, other freight, right, that all gets consolidated. Well, someone's going to take all that apart first before they can put it on a truck,
unload the trailer,
unload it to get it to FedEx, UPS, DHL, ground, however it's coming back to you. So again, that's just another step.
Time, more time.
Exactly.
Which is why we talk about how much we love landed. Working land.
Yes. If you can find a factory that will do all of this work for you, again, it's an LDP vendor. It's a vendor that will work landed, duty paid. They will take all of this off your plate, and all you have to worry about is the day that it's arrived in your DC. That's the golden ticket.
Granted, you don't have visibility, so now you're asking the vendor, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Correct.
And they're like, cool your jets. It'll get there when it gets there. Which isn't always the best answer.
Yeah. But just back real quick to boat, I would say on average 45.
Yeah.
Sometimes 60. 60 is your buffer, which is crazy to say. Usually 45 is a little bit closer. When you can get on that fast boat, you're talking 30 days, or if you have a full container load, you could probably get down closer to that 30 days as well.
Yeah.
And then airing is interesting. So obviously, if you think about the jewelry world, you most always air jewelry because it's so lightweight, it's little. I will tell you though, if you are launching a new brand, I pretty much suggest to everybody to try to build your margins based on an air model when you can. So even for apparel, when it seems like it's not the most cost advantageous, I get that. But if you are trying to build a business, if you are trying to chase back, we call it chasing, meaning get back in stock quickly. The last thing you want is to be beholden to a 45-day boat vessel because of your margins. Mm-hmm. So I always say, if the model can afford you to build to have air be your mode of transportation, it does not mean you can't flip to boat.
Right. It's just icing on the cake.
It is, yes, that's gravy train when you can get it back to boat and save, if it's apparel, a couple dollars. If it's fleece, it might be up to $4. But if you can make it work so that you are first to market, speed to market, you can get back in stock faster. I am a huge proponent of air when you can.
That is a lot of things we talked about, but let's kind of narrow it down and put one thing right after the other and talk like that math timing. So we talked in the beginning about samples. Samples can be, let's say, a month.
Yeah, for one round.
for one round.
Correct.
Let's say you're doing 2 or 3 rounds. You're looking at 2 or 3 months
Correct.
just to get your samples in.
Correct.
And then once you approve a sample and you go into production, you're looking at a month and a half for fabric or materials, and then another, let's say, month and a half,
Correct.
2 months.
Yep.
So now we're on to 6.5 months.
Yep.
And then you're getting on a boat, you're at 8 months, call it.
Correct.
And that is going as fast as you humanly can.
Yep.
That's not really accounting for the week of time that the package sat on your desk and you like hemmed and hawed about what you were going to do about the approval.
And that's not really having any major holidays in the midst.
No major holidays.
And that you've been planning your production time with your factory, so you know that you're getting in, but yeah, that's the reality of it.
Fabric development. If you're developing like you did for your PJs, fabric from scratch, I would add another 3-4 months to that.
Yeah, correct.
So I think like really, really big picture rule of thumb for accessories and jewelry, I would give it 6 months. For apparel, I would say 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then for really custom fabric apparel, I would give it a year. Really lovely, high quality luxury, like leather handbags with hardware, I would go up to like an 18 month.
Wow, that's insane.
Mm-hmm. It's a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, are we there yet?
Depends on
depends. Yes, exactly. It depends on a lot of things. But we're hoping that this at least helped explain some of the why as you start to dialogue with these factories, as you start to really dig in and be like, oh shit, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. You're not alone out there. This is really kind of par for the course when it comes to overseas manufacturing. And even if you are, to be honest, I'll take a quick flip here and just say, even if you're looking at US based manufacturing, it's really, you're going to save on transportation, but beyond that, it's really not all that different because they're so backed up right now.
They're so backed up.
The capacities are so slim. And they're still probably importing that fabric or yarn from somewhere else, not here in America. So you might, shave off what you shave off in production lead time, you're going to add back with importing of raw materials. So, it really is a pretty fair assumption no matter where you are kind of in the world.
And there's some countries I've worked in that have been slower because the cultural like differences in that company or that country are just like things aren't emergency ever.
Yeah. Correct.
Or other long holidays, like working with Italy was always really tough because the work day was pretty short. Same working with Spain, then there was the like siestas. Everyone takes the entire month of August off.
Hashtag goals. We need to start opening a factory in Italy so that we can like be on that
go there
lifestyle.
Yeah. Plus like how big Christmas is, like, so you have a lot of holidays over there too, but I always just kind of felt like it was like, it'll get there when it gets there. And I'm like, really? Is that not what we're doing? So there will be, whether it's cultural or a holiday or just timing hiccups everywhere you go in every single country. And I think we want to shine light on this because it's not just you. Just because you're starting out, like it doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. Like this is really part of the industry and you have to be prepared and steel yourself for the fact that it's going to be a bit of a slog until it becomes like very second nature for you and your factory and you grow that relationship.
Yeah. So buckle up. It's going to be a little bit of a long journey,
but it's worth it.
Totally worth it.
You see that product, it comes in, it's perfect. You're like, go, here's my PO, and you're on cloud 9.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I think we'll wrap this up then.
Yeah.
Thanks. There was a lot of good information that we shared. Hopefully you guys are gleaning some things as you start to, again, have these conversations. Just our point here is to educate you guys, just to make sure that you are understanding what you're walking into. And when they start to come back with information that you feel armed to continue those conversations.
Yes. And feel free to ask any questions in the comments or, shoot us a line, hop on our Instagram. We're at the Sourcing Gals.
Yeah.
And be sure to follow along so that you know when we're dropping our next bit of knowledge bombs.
Perfect. Okay. Well, until next time, signing off from
the Sourcing Gals.
Have a good one.